everyone. My name is Stephanie. Let's see if I did this right. I'm new to, oh, look at that, like it's even a video. Okay, so my name is Stephanie, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about who I am and why I'm here. I can't do two things.
You're awesome. That's
Yeah.
why you're here.
Well, you know what? These guys are awesome. So I'm a mom. So I've got, okay, just press that button. I'm a mom. I have 4 boys that are adolescent now, and my 2 oldest boys, Logan and Gavin, in that picture, have autism. Go to the next one. It's not like you gotta click. It's like with the mouse.
You get your friend.
So these are my firstborn babies, and they were diagnosed with autism at the age of 1, and we have had quite an adventurous life. It's been really difficult for the boys. They have pretty profound disabilities. It impacts every moment of every day, and there's 4 of them. I had them in 3 years. So it's always been a wild ride, but 3 years ago, our ride got really, really rocky, and my son Logan fell 20 feet out of his school window. He broke his back in 5 places, his head in 5 places, both his arms, his legs, his ribs, his punctured lungs, blood on the brain. And for the first time, I wasn't able to just muscle through it. I had 1 kid in a trauma hospital in a coma, and 3 kids at home that needed help. And so I will go a little bit more into that. Let's get to the next slide. Logan is a miracle child and has recovered beautifully. So we'll get into that when we move into what we do here. But that's who I am. That's why I'm here. I do a lot of other things. But we'll go into that in a second. But I want to introduce you to the young man. This is Thomas.
Hello.
Hi, Tom.
That's me. And so this is why, the big reason why I got involved with my daughter Shelby was born 3 months premature, has cerebral palsy, some anxiety that makes things life interesting sometimes, but is also an incredibly brilliant advocate and kind of the inspiration of my life and why I do this. And you can go to the next one. You can see I got old.
No, that's
Whoop,
it.
keep going,
all
that's
you
it.
get.
And so
So,
one more thing.
my order.
One more thing. The only thing is I am known as the OG, which is the original gangster. I had no idea what that meant. But I thought I was just the old guy.
Nicole.
I don't like taking pictures of myself. Yes, we can go to the next slide. Hi, everyone. So my name is Nicole Grabner. I am incredibly honored to speak here today with these amazing people. A little bit about me. My husband and I are both disabled veterans, but honestly, it wasn't so much, thank you, about our disability that started our advocacy journey. It was the diagnosis of our youngest. And since then, we've come to discover that it's actually both of our children that have the diagnosis. They're both on the spectrum with comorbid conditions. So this is, the light of my life, right here, right there in the center. And I mean, they got dad's dimples and everything, so I'm done for life. And then I started a bit with the Partners in Policy Making. How many partners are in the room? Yeah. Thank you for the Florida Developmental Disabilities Council. I'll give a very quick, thank you for them. That's in the top corner there. But that's kind of how I got started doing a lot of what I do, and we'll get into that one later.
All right, so how we're going to work this out. We are a team here. And I want to give you guys a quick overview of who our group is, how it started, and, what we're looking for from all of you. So, hit it next. We're families, number 1. She's a mom, he's a dad, I'm a mom. We have self-advocates in our group. We have moms, dads, caregivers, grandmas, providers. People that work with are amazing individuals, and we all gather together. But this is how we started. I didn't know how to do this very big story, so these are little, one at a time, Mama. Okay. Start image 1. My kid had an accident. I was at a point in my life I didn't know what to do or what to do. So now we can go. So I reached out to help. I contacted the Agency of Persons with Disabilities. I heard that if my children were in crisis, that we could get help right away. And I was connected with the OG advocate, Tom Nurse, who helps navigate families through this process. Tom and I got very close. We worked really hard. We sent in all the paperwork, called everyone that I possibly could to try to get the services turned on for my family. Our house was on fire. But we were met with a lot of delaying, and it took us over a year to get services in the home. So about 10 months through that process, a girlfriend of mine said, hey, there's some people at the courthouse tomorrow. Why don't you go tell them what you've been telling me about what you're walking through? I think they can help you. So unknowingly, I went to our local legislative delegation and talked to people. I didn't even know who they were or what they did. And there was a woman, next one, there was a woman, Senator Pastomo and Representative Mello, who brought me back, and they really helped me understand what we could do. They called the agency, they helped get services turned on, and we started working together on some solutions for that process. So then, Tom and I got together and we were like, man, what would it be like if every family across the state of Florida that was looking for help was able to share their story? I didn't know what I was doing, so anybody can do it. Why don't we get families together, see if they'd be interested? So that's where we started our We the People, by the People, for all the people group. We are virtual most of the time, but I think now we're 2 years old, and I have seen several of these families all across the state of Florida get together. So, I forgot what's next. Oh yeah, so on August 5th, 2023, we had our very first Zoom meeting. And it was a wild combination of excitement, frustration, sadness, and families all over just wanting to take their part in it. So our mission, we have recently formalized our mission so that we could become a nonprofit organization. And so we have a formal mission, which I've not memorized. So our mission is to unite families in every county, share our stories and experiences, forging connection with legislators, decision makers, and the public. Through these authentic relationships, we seek to drive system improvement and champion dignity, integration, and support for all people in the state of Florida. So the gist of that is we want families in every county to get connected with the people that can help you so that we can improve things here in Florida and have some positive changes. So what's up with our name? Oh my gosh. It was very intentional, but we got a lot of flack because We the People was a big movement when we started. There's a lot of We the People groups, and we actually got confused with a couple other things going on. So We the People, by the people, for all the people is a part of our Constitution. And our folks here in Florida with developmental disabilities, we're a part of Florida. And so we want to be a part of that model that our country is, because we are. And so that is the deal with our name. However, that's a lot to spit out. So some people call us the We the People group, some people call us For All the People. Sometimes I just get short and I call it Fat P, but I've got a lot of feedback on that. So I just wanted to let you guys know that's the name. And really, what's really cool, I think if you click that, it does this. I'm learning technology, like it moves. So we started Zoom meetings August 5th, 2023, and did not take a break until what, a month ago? Yeah, every Friday from 3 to 4, we meet on Zoom. And it has been incredible. There are over 1,500 families part of our group. We all have our own unique experiences, but when we share them together, solutions come together. There's a lot of wisdom in this group. We have a lot of families that have been doing this since the inception of services here in Florida. And then we have new families who don't know what to do or where to go. And so we talk once a week. We're on a break for the first time so we could get some organization here. But in between our meetings, because we all have a lot going on, we do have a Facebook group. And I put the QR code. If you're not in our group, join it. it's for everyone. And then we also recently got a Facebook page so that we could get things more shareable. Our group is really private. It's for our families to be able to talk freely. And then outside of that, what was really exciting is that after we all met, we did our stories, which is coming next. Families started to go to our legislative delegation meetings. And if you don't know what that is, it is a really amazing experience for every single person in the state to go in front of all the lawmakers in your area, explain maybe a challenge or something you want them to consider for the next lawmaking year, and start that relationship. So our families came out in droves and really started to help make those connections more powerful. And through that, through families coming out, meeting their representatives, meeting their senators, getting to know the people that can help us, we started to shape policy. And it has been a wild year. I had no idea what we would be able to accomplish. Last year, Senate Bill 1758 came from many of the families in our group. This year, House Bill 1103 came from a lot of voices in this room and in our group. And we want to continue that because we want to collaborate with everyone. We want this to work for our guys. So the big news, the wild news, is if you have a little foam waiver, wave it up. Wave it up. You got a foam waiver? Anybody going to the dance? I handed them out. Yeah, okay, cool. Well, we just put together a website, and it has some room to grow, but it is brand new, and we're very excited. We can have a central place so that if you forget our Facebook link or you don't know where to go, you can access our meetings there. You can find archives. We put our meetings on YouTube because 3 to 4 every Friday is difficult for families like us. So we put it there so you guys can come back, catch up with what's going on. And then we've got some educational stuff we're working on. But we also have a way for you to do your story. So on our website, there is a spot. I think I did come up with that. Share your story. So you're going to see what it looks like. So you come down here and you can directly input that information. And I'm going to go straight into my next thing. That's who we are. That's what we do. We are families. There's no professional behind this. And that's what I really love about this group is we get to be us wherever we are. And Tom will talk to us a little bit about the truth. So stories is my deal. I came into this because I had a heck of a story. And by explaining to people who deal with data and numbers and policy, who was behind that really changed how things are. And stories, I hear from a lot of families, everybody's asking me to do a story, I gotta do, my story, I need help. These stories, when you connect that with getting with your lawmakers, your decision makers, it's unbelievable the change in the conversation. We have a lot to say about what's going on in our world. And so this one pager can really help you. And so I'm gonna go a little backwards here. When Logan had his accident, my thoughts were pretty jumbled. I had gone 10 months with just me and 4 kids, and 2 of them had wildly exceptional needs. So by taking everything that I was going and putting it into a one page when I met with that representative, it helped me center and focus and be able to say the thing that I wanted to say. And so it also makes your message clear. Next one. And it helped me a lot stay confident, because a lot of the times when I'm talking about my kids, you'll see it, I'm emotional. And it's really hard for me to talk, what do you call that, professional, grown-up, when everything's triggered inside. And so that one pager that I put together really helped me narrow it in. So we have crafted a pretty simple formula, how to build your story. 3 simple parts. Who are you? Where are you from? What part of Florida are you in? What challenges are you facing? What does your family need? And so when we started this, we put together a story. I hope I have an example next. Yes. Okay, I'm gonna use my own son. So when you go on that website, when you type in that information, it's very simple. His name's Logan. we live in Collier County. At this moment, he was 13. And I put in there, say 3 things about yourself. Sometimes when I talk to people who I don't know, I get nervous. So some icebreakers. What does Logan like to do? What do you like to do? And then I went into a very short message of what our challenges are and what we needed help with. So that when I connected with my legislator and I left that with them, we were able to have a more intimate connection. Logan's not a data number. I'm like, one more. And then the other thing to realize, if you've done stories with us, your story evolves, it changes. Logan's story the first year is different than Logan's story last year, and it's certainly different than this year. So if you've done this before, please do this again. Dun, da, 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 here's my big ass, press a button. So this is what I'd really like to ask of you. Legislative session is actually still going on this year. But once it stops, which is most likely in the next week or so, the next year starts. And we want to keep the momentum going. We need families to take your phone out, take a picture, it'll take you right to that link. And while you're at Family Café, this is very simple to do. Put your information in there. We will give you these stories to set you up for success, because what is coming forward is legislators want to meet with their constituents. They want to meet with their people to hear about what can we do better, what can we do differently, and this will really help prepare you for that next step. So I would love for families to please fill this out. We will get these in your hands so that you can do it, and if you're unable to, we have a lot going on. If you're able to get there, we'll get that into their hands with you. So that is it. This was I want to highlight this so they really want, they know you're here. Do these stories while it's on your mind, while you're motivated, because this really has changed, saved lives in a lot of our families. So, moving on, that is my part. I'm the story girl. We meet every Friday. We have a schedule that we handed out, and I think we handed them all out. So on our website this weekend, it'll go up with what our schedule is. Our first meeting is going to be at the end of July. And then as we get closer to session, we start meeting weekly so that we can connect with everyone. And we're going to bring in people to talk with us too. We have a lot of experts, a lot of people that know advocacy in and out. And so we'll have guest speakers, but we also want to hear from our families, our experiences. I think what's been really cool about our meetings is when families come in and they had no hope and they were able to do something. That's what happened to me. That's why I started this. Is I came from a place of desperation and despair. And once I put that out into a hand that could help, oh my God, everything changed. It was this huge snowball of empowerment. And every one of our families shares that story. So coming from, the reason I know anything is from Tom Nurse over here. And so we do call him OGT because he's been around for 100 years. But I'll let him go ahead and share all that.
So yeah, I guess I am the OGT, and we are from once where we came. And I'm a graduate of the first class of Partners in Policymaking, and one of the things that we learned in Partners was what you have to build on the history of those that have worked before you. You have to be able to take it to the next level, to take it to the next step. So I got that started when I was involved with that when Shelby was just 3 years old. She's 34 now. And so it was an absolute game changer. And one of the things that it began to talk about was the history. And one of the most important things, this is going to focus really on developmental disabilities, on the waiver, and how did we get to where we're at. And we can start the story by talking about Katie Beckett. Katie Beckett was this little girl that got encephalitis and ended up in the hospital when she was just a little girl and had spent years in the hospital, had stabilized, and mom and dad wanted to take her back home. This one was when insurance had lifetime caps, and so they had wiped out their insurance. They had ended up becoming poor enough to qualify for Medicaid, so now she was being covered by Medicaid in the hospital. And mom and dad wanted to bring her home. They said, we see we can stabilize her now. We need a little bit of home nursing and stuff like that, but we want to bring Katie home. We don't want her to grow up living in a hospital. And the hospital administrator said, yes, you can take her home, but you will lose your insurance because Medicaid only provides care in hospitals and institutional settings. So you'll lose your Medicaid and she'll die. What a deal. Well, this, needless to say, a mom and a dad, mom in particular, went and saw their U.S. congressman and told the story about how this was such an offensive thing and they needed help and what could they do. And this is during the presidency of Ronald Reagan. And the good fortune being is the next day Ronald Reagan happened to be in Des Moines, Iowa. And as a tradition back then, when the president came to your district, you got to fly home on Air Force One with them and have a little conversation. And they got the representative told the story about Katie. The president was so enamored, but also so offended that government was in the way. That was one of his big things. He went back and he called all the federal agency heads that were involved with Medicaid and the barriers and kind of told the story about Katie and then left with the line that says, here's the deal. When you all figure out how Katie can go home, you all can go home. Love that line. So they spent the entire night, all the next day, and late into the next night, and called the president and said, we got a solution. Got a solution. He said, well, what is it? He said, we're going to waive these certain limitations that we can be able to have. Like, there's got to be at least 5 Katies in every state, so why don't we do this Katie Beckett waiver thing? Katie went home. She was the first person in the country to be able to have Medicaid services in her home. The crack in the door. Now we leap to years later, 1999. Medicaid, this institutional bias. Hospitals, nursing homes is where Medicaid happens. State of Georgia, 2 poor black women with mental health needs on Medicaid. Needed help. The state of Georgia said, okay, the only place that we do mental health services here in Georgia is in the state mental health hospital. And when they got better, they said, listen, you were crazy to get here, and you're crazy to think you're going to leave. And they were like locked up, trapped in the mental health hospital. And fortunately, all the advocate organizations sued the state of Georgia, took it all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Olmstead decision happened and said, you know what, that's not right. You should have equal access and opportunity, not to be discriminated against because you are poor. And that was the beginnings of the home and community-based services waiver. Okay, so Katie created the waiver. The Olmstead decision said home and community. The next year, the state of Florida was in federal contempt of court for taking federal money to serve people with developmental disabilities. And it was being served by an agency that I used to call developmental, we don't have any money, services, because no matter what you said, that's what they would say. And so, Lawton Childs was governor. He died. Jeb Bush became governor. He had to finish settling this lawsuit because the state of Florida was in federal contempt of court. And he heard about the Olmstead decision, heard about home and community-based waivers, knew about this wait list. Shelby was one of the class action lawsuit participants. This is how the cafe started too. That's what happened. The decision was made to bring on the home and community-based waiver in Florida, and everybody that was on the wait list, which sadly did not include the probably 20,000 families that I know personally, I was told, listen, we don't have any money, so we can just close your case because that's all we got. And a lot of families did that. So those that were smart enough to hang out came on the waiver. So that's how the Medicaid waiver came to Florida. That's how the Family Café was celebrating that and educating people. And for years, I stood next to Governor Bush as he welcomed people, and it was a wonderful experience of agencies that were held accountable to say, okay, he had all the agency heads up there and he would do a Ronald Reagan on them. So what are you going to do about that? And it was wonderful. It's not quite the same these days, but that's life. So now we're going to move into Life According to Tom. The programs and services are intended to help, but unfortunately many of them are designed to say no. Would you agree? Yes. Right? So if first you have to admit there's a problem and not pretend everything's happy, then the next one is there are tools to say no. And those tools that are used, and many of you have experienced, we deny, we delay, and we discourage, right? 360, 85 days, very discouraging. I've had folks with severe autism that, no, they don't even have autism. Wrong. So there's an old metaphor that I use, like it's called bozo, the punching bag. You remember that blow-up clown thing? You could blow it up, you could knock the hell out of it, boom, it pop back up again, right? That's what we gotta be. We gotta be bozos. You know, and we gotta let them know we're not going away. And that's what we're gonna do. Go ahead. You know, so the rules of the game is how we gotta play. We're not asking for a favor. We're not trying to just give you a wink wink and let it go. No. We need to be able to tell the truth. And you know, the truth is sometimes your kid's beating the hell out of you. They're smearing crap around there. Life can be very, very difficult. You may not have slept for, more than 2 hours at a time for years. You may have been impoverished. Marriages have been destroyed. The truth is the truth. And that's kind of the story behind the stories. That we're going to tell the truth because it will set us free. Right? And that the truth really matters. And think about a parachute, and you're going to jump out of a plane. Do you want the average parachute, or do you want the one that fits you? And so like the Titanic, as an example, greatest ship in the world, never going to sink, everything's beautiful, right? On a bad day, the Titanic hit an iceberg and sank. So when we're telling the truth, we don't average. We got to talk about when the fires are raging, when it's the worst it can possibly be, when I'm terrified, when my kid has hurt me, when they're hurting others, when they are so medically or behaviorally, developmentally complex that that's the download. Because the truth is, most people, particularly those legislators, they have no idea. We're going to assume they're good people. Sometimes it doesn't work out, but we assume that they're good people, but they just don't know. And the beautiful thing is ignorance is curable, right? Go ahead. So part of that has to do with the truth. Medical necessity is by law the cornerstone of medical necessity, specifically on the waiver about health and safety, right? So the health of a person, the safety of a person on a bad day, on the worst day. And I bet you many of you have heard from a doctor that said, he's writing me a letter, I need this. He said, well, tell me what you need me to say. Not something because they're stupid. They don't know what we know, particularly if we are so impassionately focused of learning about the rules, the policies, the procedures of how to play the game. One of the things I skipped over was, don't go yet. That is, when you play by the rules, you got to make sure they're playing by the rules too, right? And you got to know who to call when they're not. So medical necessity becomes a really, really important part of this because it's not, we are parents, but we only have an opinion. When you have a doctor that says, this is a diagnosis, this is a plan of care, this is the recommended services, this is the intensity, this is the frequency. Now it becomes a prescribed, medically necessary thing. You see the difference? So you're not asking for a favor, and many, many, many times the doctor will write the first letter and then we'll rewrite it to help better clarify, articulate real specifics. I help families develop a 24-hour schedule of care in 15-minute increments. Because, they don't need any help at night. Ha! You're like the fire department. You're there 24/7 waiting for that moment, right? The firemen don't get just paid or just show up when there's a fire. They're ready from the cat in the tree to the chemical spill to anything in between, right? So again, we play by the rules. Make sure that they play by the rules. And this is really important. So if you don't know what the rules are, they're going to kick your ass. They will. Because they'll use it against you. But I also can tell you there are many, many people that work within agencies that went there because they wanted to help, but find themselves unable to advocate. And behind the scenes, they're going, yeah, baby, you go. In front of, oh, what a pain that person is, right? But we can be the spokesperson. We have a freedom to speak that nobody else has. And we have to exercise it. So that's where the stories again, telling the real story, that it's not just a diagnosis, it's not just a behavior, it's a human being that loves classical music, it's my son that I love, it's in a family, and there's pictures and all these things. That humanism just completely changes it. But the truth is sometimes they're not playing by the rules. That's where things like disability rights of Florida becomes a really important part. And again, sometimes they can tell you the rule, but they're not allowed to yell as loud as we are. But if we've got the rule, we're going, here it is right here, okay? So,
Next one.
now it's Nicole's time. So thank you for the attention.
Hello and thank you. I don't know how to come after that. So basically, in my part of the presentation, as the three of us were kind of talking about, what are we going to talk to you guys about today? One of the reasons that they, I think, pull me into this circle is because one of the priorities I had coming out of my class was to try to build bridges between the millions and thousands, whatever, of nonprofits, organizations, providers, families, friends, communities. Most of it was just, there's so many of these people that are trying really hard to work for our families, but they don't talk to each other. And if the squeaky wheel gets the grease, my gosh, we should always be getting greased. I don't know how else to say that. It sounds horrible, but we should always be the very first one that's getting the money. We should always be the first one for resources, and yet somehow, at a last legislative session that is still going on, but winding down, we had roughly 2,000 bills that were submitted at the beginning of session, and we come away for bills that are specifically related to our IDD community. I mean, there's a lot, so this is the rough estimate that I have, so bear with me, but we had 5 that were signed into law. So, and I'm not going to say that every bill is perfect. I'm not going to say that every bill is, the best bill. It takes a lot of work, and we may not always get what we want, but we have to keep fighting. And so this was a bit of how I started right here. So when you finish Partners, they take you up to Tallahassee for what's known as DD Day. If you've never been, I really hope that you come and join us. This is a fantastic opportunity. It's Developmental Disability Awareness Day. So during session, the 60-day session in Florida, they have multiple awareness days up at the Capitol, and usually 5 or 6 at a time on one given day. The very first time I went, it was the same day as Catholic Awareness Day. I'm not sure about anyone who doesn't know about Catholic awareness, but I will say, as someone who was raised Catholic, I was comforted by seeing, everyone there in red t-shirts and whatnot, but I will say it was a very uncomfortable ride up and down the elevators with the priest. I was pretty sure knew I hadn't been to confession in years. But when you go there, right, you have booths. You see here in the first picture on the top, that's the rotunda. And so we have booths kind of all over this area where the legislators and their aides are walking around, and we're hoping to catch their, attention, tell them our story, tell them what's going on. And there's a lot of it. It's frantic, the energy, because people are rushing here, rushing there. And when I first walked around, I thought, wow, look at us. We got a good representation. But I want to say that I maybe saw 30 families that day, but the rest of it, I'd come out of a meeting with a legislator, and there was 30 people at a time going into an office that were there for Catholic days. And I thought, at the end of the day, who are they going to remember? Are they going to remember, Nicole Grabner, who was there to talk about, in my opinion, my amazing kids, but the help and services that we need? Are they going to remember, the full of the priests that are making sure you go to confession and everything else? So that was my frustration, I think, And that's where, at the end of the day, I decided my project for partners was going to be building bridges, building collaboration, making our voice, at the end of the day, the one they remember, the loudest voice, the very loudest voice. Because if the CDC estimates that 1 in 4 people have a disability, and we're the only minority group that's always taking applications, they need to hear us. So, you can go to the next slide. I wanted to give just a very brief history. I think for me, one of the things that was really weird, I don't know about your experience in school, but we didn't really talk about the disability rights movement very much at all. I had no idea how much it coalesced with everything in time, civil rights, women's suffrage, all of these things. I didn't know that happened at the same time. I'm very ashamed to say that. So this was a learning process. But the reason I bring it up was because the disability rights movement, and I'm not going to say uniquely, but I will say that it was strategic and important that we locked arms with these other organizations and we became even louder, right? So I feel like in a time right now where things are so uncertain and scary, the worst thing is to be unseen, be unheard, feel alone. And I wanted to hopefully share that we aren't. So my plan, hopefully, is to continue moving forward so that way we can lock arms and keep going. All right, so I'm not going to talk about all of this, but, kind of understanding, like we talked about, how everything is fairly polarized and contentious in our society today. And I think it's important to acknowledge that for our families in particular, it can feel like we're having things come at us from every direction right now, right? And that's important to acknowledge. It feels almost under fire, our community. And, it's overwhelming. And so I want to acknowledge and respect and take a moment for that, because it is. I can't tell you every little reason why we got to this point. I have some thoughts about that up on the slide. But I feel like it's almost like the erosion of community, the erosion of small towns. You used to have like a town doctor, or a pub that you'd go to and meet up with your neighbors at the end of the day, and that's just not really how it is anymore. A lot of these things contribute to that. So you can go to the next slide. So how do we fix it? We talked a little bit about social capital, but really what I'm talking about is building community. Who do you go to when you guys are in crisis? Who's the first phone call that you make when, hey, my kids are over the top, I need a 2-second break, I need to call someone. Who are you calling? And essentially with social capital, we're talking not about, because it's not my first call to APD, it's not. It's not to the Department of Education. It's going to be to my family, it's going to be to my friends, it's going to be to my community. This is what social capital is about. And I think that we have to keep fighting for the services that we need, but we also need to come together. We need to reestablish our community. So you can go to the next slide. So we talk about social capital, we can talk about it in a broad lens, or we can talk about it in a smaller lens. Broad lens, like when you talk about agencies that reach across the state or across the nation. Those are how we use those tools, right, to kind of come together broadly. But if the next slide talks about as a community tool, I feel like that's where the magic happens, right? So how do we establish that again in smaller circles? How do we have our community come together? How do we get that started? So for me, when I first started connecting with all of these agencies, I was curious. I asked a lot of questions, probably more questions than people wanted me to ask. I was always a person about, well, where is that referenced? How do I find that information? What data are you looking at? And I'd go into meetings and I'd raise my hand in the back of the room. I went to a lot of meetings. But asking questions, because you have to also understand that a lot of people coming from a place of fear or misunderstanding or frustration. And so if you come with your own fear, that's the communication shutdown. So, be curious. Just try to, appreciate and understand everyone's lived experience, and remember to ask questions and be curious. I'm hoping that at some point we can get back to that community mentality that we've had years ago, where we have friends, family, services, that's all one thing. It's not these separate things. It's all one. And it might look like as simple as a family sitting down to dinner, because everybody knows statistics for that, about coming together at the end of the day and how important that is to keep your family strong, have that time for each other, to, in a community, like having a community garden or a book club or, you know, whatever it is that helps you break down those barriers and build bridges, okay? And hopefully what we're left with is more of this and less of the broken, less of the fighting and any of that. That's what I'm hoping for. I keep hitting this thing, sorry.
Oh my God, we ended early. Okay. We're not done. Oh, well, so we want to be that family. A lot of our families across the state of Florida, we don't have a kitchen table to sit at with mom, dad, and everyone else. Maybe lots of reasons for that. And so when we're talking about building community, when we started the call, I think what really helped us was, does anybody know Alan Abramowitz? Anybody got his number? So he just retired, lucky dog, and but he was the CEO of the Arc of Florida. And the Arc of Florida is unbelievable. What they do for families is incredible. And he said, cool, families are getting together. I'm gonna help give some expert advice. Margaret Hooper with the Duty Council. She's in this room. She helps, you know, we do know a lot of things, but we are not policy experts. And Margaret comes on our calls and she works with us. We have waiver support coordinators. We've had Carol Gormley of the Managed Care, Florida Community Care. She was on our call. She answered questions. We had Speaker Danny Perez on the call. We have had quite a few people wanting to come alongside with us. And what Nicole's here to do, and what she does anyway, is grow that. So if you know of anybody that would like to give some information on our meetings, come along. I so wish I had the slides, but if you did take a screenshot, we did put that in our Facebook group, so that could be some motivation when we'll be meeting. If you go to our website, at the bottom of the page, not ready for the story thing yet, it's all right. You can just type your name and your email, and we'll let you know what's coming ahead. We are really trying to help families be empowered. And sometimes that's in a meeting alone, and sometimes we need friends to help us. And so we do that and meet needs. We have families all over the state that really want to see real collaboration. I think the heartbreak for me this year is we did a lot of work getting our legislators up to speed. Oh yeah, I'm early. So we also created Legislator University. We're a complex, complicated group. And the laws around us are even more complex. And so helping our legislators kind of dial it down was just a 5 to 7 minute video. Watch this. And so we do that, and we educate ourselves that way too. I lost my train of thought. So our Facebook group is a really great spot for information. Thanks, Jamie. Yeah, get it.
All right.
Questions?
So we got some questions, but I got a couple other things to talk about a little bit. You know, just because it got passed, it doesn't mean it happens. Right? What we're talking about is something called legislative intent. You know, and so for instance, last year, the online application was a direct connection to Logan's story. It was sitting in a hospital trying to figure out where a fax machine is and dealing with paper, and we never got it, and blah, 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 blah. And JJ, and waiting in his stories. And so the legislative intent is what they wanted to do, how they wanted to address it, and a shocking consequence that none of us thought was the purpose drove out of a crisis. But because there wasn't a checkbox that said crises, now I gotta give Stephanie some serious props. This is a crazy, brilliant woman here. You know, her faith, her talent, and her skills around marketing and communication have just taken and re-inspired me. I was giving up. I was losing hope. I was discouraged. I wanted to just walk away. And I couldn't walk away from not only the story, but the way she was showing me that what I knew was important, but how it got communicated was where the impact came. And Nicole is a brilliant community organizer. She pulls together pieces. She's got that understanding of military process and the respect, but also the leadership that's necessary. And so all of us have our own skills and complement each other in a way that what we want you to recognize is not just us. Every one of you have stories, have a way to lead, have a way to inspire, to enlighten. That legislative intent was, we got to make a better way, more accountable way, a way to track that the paper that you said you needed, we actually sent it. You said you got it. We can show you that you got it. You know where it's at. And then they came back with, well, we need a different one for the crises because this doesn't say crises. Well, hell, they're all crises, right? Whether you call it or not, it is a crisis. To us, it's a crisis. You know, when you look at legislative time and administrative time versus the reality of family time, 24 hours is a long time. We're talking about 12 months, 14 months for something to happen. So the difference in perspective about time is something that we have to communicate, that there's an urgency. It's not just a right? Like consumer-directed care. I got involved with that in the original authoring committee. Now it's taking 6 months to transition from the iBudget to consumer-directed care. We're meeting this afternoon with the new administrative director to help them understand that. So again, just to finish up the legislative intent thing, we came back this year and explaining, here's the online application, here was the intent, which they all agreed to, and then the realization that no, if you were in a crisis, it was back to the old paper ways, slow, slow, slow. And that's how, when you educate and inspire and get involved with legislative language by being introduced to the policy people to be able to help them know what to write and how to say it. That's why this year's bills came out that said we're going to streamline things, we're going to hold you accountable, we're going to make you put data out, we're going to work on changing the things that somebody coming out of early steps should be going right to APD, because what's happening was one of the most important parts of the waiver is waiving the family income. And when we're driving people poor, that ain't a good outcome. So you can see the inspiration that we try to provide, but your stories, your individual family stories, we don't know them. And we can help amplify that. So I bet there's some questions out here. Anybody got one for us? There you go, what's up?
Can you explain consumer-directed care?
I'll explain it the way I see it. Consumer-directed care really recognizes the unique and complex reality of family care, in that I know that many times somebody that's got a developmentally, behaviorally, and medically complex person, they could need 6 or 7 different services to happen simultaneously. That trying to get somebody to come to your house at night and be there every night ain't gonna happen regularly. And so consumer-directed care also recognize that not all families, but families could be excellent caregivers. The extended family, the ability to decide who comes in your front door, they're working for your, you don't get the, you don't work, I don't work for you, I work for the agency, you can't tell me what to do. Yes, you can, because you're directly connected to their paycheck. So consumer-directed care, people get upset because, oh, we cut it by 8%. I don't like it either, but here's the bottom line. Tell me people on iBudget that you lose a provider and it takes 3, 4, 5, 6 months to get somebody new, right? Every month that service is not provided is 8%. The historical reason why it was 92% was because at the time when consumer-directed care first came on, the utilization rate of the regular waiver was 92% of every dollar we authorized actually got spent, so we're not going to give you more. That's how that came about. So I'll be glad to go in detail more about it. At 5:30 today, there is a get to know CDC. It's a very good program. The data on outcome measures in every single case, every single measure is better than the iBudget. Next question.
Can you elaborate for her about the managed Medicaid that they're trying to force people to do?
I'm not a big fan. And I'll tell you why. If I'm a company and I've got 100,000 people and I'm gonna give you the same amount of money for all 100,000 people, no matter what the needs are, and we're on that high utilization end of it, what do you think is gonna happen? It ain't. And so I can see that we got a lot of pushback and we're not really happy because these are programs that are billions of dollars. Well, with billions of dollars becomes a lot of lobbying, a lot of stuff in the, a lot of free stuff given away and stuff. But for managed care, it cannot necessarily be very good programs for those that have high needs, that are complex behaviorally, medically, developmentally. So one of the things that was a fast one that was pulled last year, when they renewed the managed care contracts, they swept everybody, including those with developmental disabilities that were supposed to be excluded by statute, and said everybody's going to manage care unless you know to get out. So we launched a campaign to educate people about how to get out. And then this year we went and said, no, 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 no. I know this is a train that's coming, but it ought to be an option to get on that train, not the fast one. So that's why, much to the chagrin, they assured us it's not going to be it's going to be voluntary. It did come out, well, that meant after a year. Wrong. So now in the statute, now it just got passed, it takes effect July 1, it's voluntary option.
Indefinitely?
And to further that, so when it first came out, House Bill 1103 looked very different than it does today. None of the stuff that was in there today was in there, but they were going to streamline managed care statewide, even for people who are already on the waiver. And it was a very quick move when things changed in committees. So we met on Fridays. We had a lot of families with experience with the waiver, with managed care, and they reached out to their legislators and said, hey, we want an option. And we just walked through this with ACA this year, where we weren't given an option to get into the thing. So we want to make sure it's really clear in this bill that families have to elect to do it. They don't just get rolled into it and then make a decision and go back. So as that brand new pilot, it's still called a pilot, as that brand new pilot is expanding statewide this year, that is why the more families that talk about how has this process been working for you. And to be perfectly honest, we got 23,000 people on a waiting list and maybe a few more. There may be a reach there, but I know for my boys, I know who they are and what works for us, and the waiver has saved our lives. A lot of the reason the three of us are doing this, we know what it's like when it works, and it can work. And so I wanted to answer that because that is a big fear with a lot of our families is like, well, we're just moving to managed care and like they took it away from us. We got that voice, and it's gonna take families to keep having that conversation. We are the lived experience experts, and your local guys need to hear that from you because when they hear it from their constituent base, then when they get together in Tallahassee and they start crafting these laws, you live in Sarasota, I live in Collier, you're in Brevard, they can all get together and say, oh wait, my constituents saw me on that too. So we should look at that. And that's how this process has gone forward. That's why these bills have gone the way they've gone, because no one's gonna care about just Logan. Florida's not gonna change just because of Michael, just because of Shelby, just because, AJ. We need to do this together, and there's a lot of things going that are unique, but systemic. And so that's why that interaction, especially with a brand new pilot going forward rather quickly, we want to make sure that families are in connection about what's working, what's not. Any questions? More questions?
Why I ask a question, the next thing is, remember Ronald Reagan? Trust and verify. So the intent was that there was going to be a choice. if we're seeing that the Medicaid fee-for-service providers are not able to be providers, then there is no choice. What we're trying to also do is make sure that we don't have the average age of someone coming on APD, which is now 23. It ought to be 4, 5, 6, because we want to not have families be forced into impoverishment to be able to get the basic Medicaid that isn't even gonna fit them right. So for some people, it's gonna work, and we're glad to see that work. And maybe it's only 15,000 people that are on the waiver, on the wait list, but the waiver is still critically important. Your ability to go to your legislator, not when they're in Tallahassee when everything is inflated, but when they're at home and say, you know, I tried to get a fee-for-service Medicaid person and there's nobody available anymore because they're telling me that they don't do that anymore. The legislators need to hear that, because the intent is that consumers have a choice, not that they're forced, trapped into a program that maybe is not fit for them.
And, oh, good, we got a question.
I don't know if you guys are doing any of this. With all the Medicaid cuts that they're proposing, I think it was $8 billion. Where do you find, or where do you think that the waiver program or any of the services for the people that are on Medicaid now are gonna go? And how much longer the people that are on the waiting list will have to wait even longer?
That's a wildly loaded question and very important one to ask. So, I don't know. I'm scared too. I don't know what's coming forward, and
I'm also a special education teacher, so I have the kiddos from 11 to 14. And I'm seeing a lot of, like, the parents, we have to fill these forms out for those students, but they're not, they're saying it's a 10-year waiting list or more for some of these kids. And these are kids with specific development delays or severe autism or a combination of both that are not getting any services at all.
so she's not as loud as we are. If you didn't hear her, she's a special education teacher. Oh my goodness, thank you. A lot. And a lot of her students aren't getting the services because the average wait list for us to get help is at the age of 23 or 10 years and oftentimes much longer until you're in crisis, right? And so what you asked me, and I'm 100% dead serious, that's what you need to write in your story to your local guy.
Well, I did that.
Because
I did write to our representative, actually, and to Rick Scott, and to our local representative. And they give you the same, we're working on it, we're trying to do what's best for our constituents. But that's just, that's.
yeah, I get those emails too, and I send those out. And so here's the difference between that contact and meeting your state legislator. The person that is in your district that was voted by you and your count, maybe not you. I'm gonna hit that in a second. You and the people in your area that is there to serve you at the state level, they are the closest thing to be able to serve this population, to go to our US senators and get those answers for you. Giving them a call, making an appointment with them, getting in front of them, and sharing, asking those questions, it's a big difference than an email. Okay, now you can come take me.
So there's a term called the taco. Some of you might have heard about that. So the reality is, just in the last couple of days, they began to realize that who's going to pick our crops, who's going to plant our foods, who's going to clean our restaurants, who's going to be able to serve our foods, who's going to be able to do those things. There's only millions of people in the street today, right? And so the truth is, the by the people is where democracy lies. So our voice, where even though we're afraid, speak up, speak out, be proud, be loud, because that's how policy changes. It is America. Democracy is real unless we let it go. In the last election, the biggest block of people was those that did not vote. We got to change that. Speak up, speak out, pull that lever. Yes, ma'am.
So I want to share my wish list, because given what she said, my understanding of the Medicaid cuts have to deal with the able-bodied clause, where they require Medicaid recipients to work. And I'm like, score, good, 80% unemployment with our IPD kids, and they wanna work, they wanna have purpose, they will work. Give them a job. Don't tell them to go get one, because they can't, but if you want them to work, give them a job and they'll be great. Now we kill two birds with one stone.
If that was true, that would be absolutely true, but like, for instance, saying, we're only gonna deport criminals, right? Of the kids coming out of schools, the janitor, the person that may have not, what we ought to be looking at is how do we improve our systems, not how do we blame people. We have run out of time.
We're out of time.
Yeah, we'd love to just also real quick to address that as well, but if you look at the statistics, over 80% of the people on Medicaid are actually already working. So, you know, if this is where it comes down to the data, this is about the community building we were talking about. So we want to say thank you guys for coming very, very much. Thank you for your time.
So we know you have classes. One last thing. One of the coolest things about our topic, our subject, our people, is we're nonpartisan. So everybody on both sides of the aisle, they got to know about us and support us. All right. Thanks for coming, guys. We will see you at the dance. We are all going to get together and like really get boogie tonight. So if you're coming to that dance, bring the heat and your foamy things.